This is the first video in the EDEXCEL B3 revision tutorial series. B3 focuses on the uses of biology and looks at control systems before moving on to behaviour and evolution, and then finishes with biotechnology. In this first video we will look over osmoregulation. You should remember looking at glucoregulation and homeostasis in EDEXCEL B1. In this video we will be looking at the regulation of water, focusing on the kidneys. So in this video tutorial we will look at the structure and function of the kidneys, we will look at how water levels are regulated, and finally we will look at kidney dialysis and how we can diagnose different kidney disorders. In our body we have two kidneys on the left and the right hand side of our body. The kidney is an ultrafilter. This means that it will filter the blood of chemicals that we wish to remove from the body. The major chemical we wish to remove is urea. Urea is a product that is produced by the liver in the breakdown of excess amino acids. However, it is toxic to us, and if it is not removed it causes our skin to go yellow. Urea is the major component in urine, which is effectively just urea that has been made into a solution. The kidneys are also able to adjust both ion and water levels in the blood, and they do this via filtering the blood and then reabsorbing the particulates that the body wishes to hold onto. Inside our kidneys we have thousands of nephrons. This is one nephron here, and it is the area which we are interested in. We have the blood supply here from the renal artery before it goes into the glomerulus. The glomerulus is a big bundle of capillaries that are under immense pressure. The pressure forces the water and the dissolved substances out of the glomerulus into the Bowman's capsule. From the Bowman's capsule, this solution will then travel down the first convoluted tubule, also known as the proximal convoluted tubule, before passing through the loop of Henle and then up the distal convoluted tubule, or the second convoluted tubule. Finally, it will then travel into the collecting duct before passing down into the ureter, then being stored in the bladder before leaving the body via the urethra. We will now look at the nephron in more detail. Inside the nephron, the kidney works in 3 steps. The first of these is the ultrafiltration step, which happens in the glomerulus. The second is the reabsorption, which happens throughout the convoluted tubules and the loop of Henle, and then finally the release of water, which is happening in the collecting duct here, where all of those waste products will be removed. Our first step is our ultrafiltration, which, as we just said, happens in the glomerulus. The glomerulus builds up a very high pressure which squeezes water, urea, ions and glucose out of the blood and into the Bowman's capsule. The glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule act like filters, so big molecules like proteins and blood cells are not squeezed out and will stay in the blood. All of the molecules that are squeezed out will then move on to the convoluted tubules. Once the filtrate reaches the convoluted tubules and the loop of Henle, reabsorption takes place. Reabsorption is the movement of the substances in the filtrate from the filtrate into the bloodstream. The body will selectively reabsorb all of the glucose, moving it back out of the nephron into the bloodstream against the concentration gradient. We will also get the diffusion of salt ions back into the blood as well. In order to determine how much water is moved back into the blood, the body releases a hormone known as ADH. This maintains the right amount of water in the body and is known as osmoregulation. We will look at ADH in more detail later on in this video tutorial. The final process that the kidneys carry out is the release of water and waste products. This is carried out by the collecting duct. Once the filtrate reaches the end of the convoluted tubules, it enters into the collecting duct. This is where any substances that have not been reabsorbed, for example excess water and urea, will move out of the nephron, down the ureter to the bladder, and then finally out of the body as urine through the urethra. As we have already looked at, the kidney selectively filters the blood. It does this by having a semi-permeable membrane. This membrane allows water molecules, glucose, urea and ions to pass through, but does not allow red blood cells or proteins to travel through. So as we can see, the smaller particles are able to travel through this semi-permeable membrane, whereas the much larger particles are kept in the bloodstream. The glucose will then be reabsorbed back into the blood through active transport. This is a type of diffusion that uses energy. It has to be active transport as we are moving against the concentration gradient, whereas water and ions are reabsorbed according to the body's needs via osmosis. We will look at ADH in a moment, which controls the permeability of this tubule wall. As we have mentioned already in this video tutorial, one of the kidney's key roles is controlling the amount of water that is in the blood. The amount of water that the kidney nephrons will reabsorb is controlled by ADH, or antidiuretic hormone. The amount of ADH that is in the blood is controlled by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus monitors the water content of the blood and instructs the pituitary gland to release ADH into the blood according to how much is needed. This process is controlled by negative feedback, where changes in the environment trigger a response that counteracts the changes. This ensures that the internal environment is kept constant, and in this case the body has the correct amount of water. Too little water can lead to death, as your cells will run out of water. However, too much water can also lead to death, as the cells will expand too much and burst. We will now look at the negative feedback loops of osmoregulation in more detail. In our body, we want to ensure that we keep a steady level of hydration. This means that we keep a constant level of water. However, over the course of the day, we both gain and lose water. For example, we may gain water in our system following drinking water. This water gain is detected by the hypothalamus, which instructs the pituitary gland to release less ADH. Because we are releasing less ADH, the kidney will reabsorb less water. This means that more water will pass through the nephron into the collecting tubule, meaning that the urine will be of lower concentration due to there being more water. There will also be more volume of urine. If, however, we get a water loss, for example, we do not consume any water for a prolonged period of time, then this will also be detected by the hypothalamus. This time, the hypothalamus will instruct the pituitary gland to release more ADH. This will then cause the kidneys to reabsorb more water. This means there will be less water reaching the collecting duct as more of it has been reabsorbed. This will mean that the urine will be of higher concentration, however it will also be of lower volume. So, in summary, when there is not enough water, the hypothalamus will signal the pituitary gland, which will increase its release of ADH. More ADH enters the kidney, meaning it will reabsorb more water. This means that we get a smaller amount of more concentrated urine being produced. When there is too much water, the hypothalamus again will signal the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland will slow down its release of the hormone. It will release less ADH. Less ADH therefore enters the kidney, which then reabsorbs less water. This means that we produce more urine as less water is being reabsorbed, and therefore it is less concentrated urine as well. An example of a 6-mark question on the kidneys and the role of ADH is as follows. So explain the role of ADH in regulating the water content of the blood. I want you to pause the video now and attempt this 6-mark answer. So from the mark scheme, we need to make sure that we have talked about the negative feedback that is occurring. During a period of hydration, when there is lots of water, we have an increased amount of water in the blood. This is detected by the hypothalamus, which acts on the pituitary gland, causing it to decrease its release of ADH, so it releases less antidiuretic hormone. This causes a decrease in permeability of the nephron, meaning that we reabsorb less water, resulting in increased volume of urine that will be less concentrated. During a period of dehydration, this is a period when water levels are too low in the blood, we will get this decreased water, which will be detected by the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus will send a signal to the pituitary gland, which will increase its release of ADH. This increases the permeability of the nephron, meaning that there is more reabsorption of water. Because we have got more reabsorption of water, this means we have a decreased volume of urine, however it will be more concentrated urine. The kidneys are quite a delicate organ, and when something goes wrong, this can lead to issues that we can pick up in urine. So by analysing urine samples, we can detect different medical conditions. The first one of these is kidney disease, which we detect by finding protein in the urine. This is caused by the protein being able to move into the filtrate through the diseased parts of the kidney. The second test we can do is for kidney damage. This is where we find blood in urine, and more precisely, it is the red blood cells. This is caused by a rupturing of the lining of the glomerulus, which causes the blood cells to be able to move into the filtrate, pass through the convoluted tubules, and then pass out through the collecting duct before being passed out of the body as urine. This is a common injury in contact sports, which can cause rupturing of the kidney easily. The final test is for glucose to be present in the urine, which is caused by diabetes. We find glucose in urine in diabetics as there is an increased concentration of glucose in the blood, so not all of it can be pushed back into the blood up the concentration gradient via active transport, meaning that some glucose will remain in the filtrate that leaves the kidney. You need to know about 2 kidney treatments for GCSE. The first of these is via dialysis machines. Dialysis machines are used by patients who have kidney failure and therefore can't filter their blood properly. The dialysis machine will filter their blood for them. Dialysis has to be done regularly to keep dissolved substances at the right concentrations and to remove waste. This prevents a buildup of urea in the blood. Dialysis fluid, found in here, has the same concentration of salts and glucose as blood plasma, which means that these aren't removed from the blood via diffusion or osmosis. Inside the dialysis machine is a semi-permeable membrane which lets ions and waste substances through, but not big molecules like proteins, just like the membranes in the kidney. This means the waste substances, such as urea and excess ions and water, are able to move across the membrane and into the dialysis fluid, which will enable them to be removed from the person's body. So we can move off the dialysis fluid. The blood is then returned back into the patient and has been successfully filtered. Dialysis treatment takes a long time, and each sitting can take up to several hours. The second treatment you need to know are kidney transplants. At the moment, a kidney transplant is the only cure for kidney disease. The donor kidney is inserted into the patient's body and connected up to the renal artery and the renal vein, just like a normal kidney. Kidneys are often donated by family members, as you can live perfectly healthily with only one kidney of your own. However, kidneys are also regularly transplanted from people who have died suddenly and are on the organ donor register or carry a donor card. The issue with a kidney transplant is that the donor kidney can be rejected by the patient's immune system, where it is treated like a foreign body and attacked by antibodies. In order to prevent a rejection, precautions are taken. So we will ensure that the kidney that is being transplanted has a tissue type that closely matches the patient, and also that the patient is treated with drugs that suppress the immune system. This means that the immune system won't attack this transplanted kidney. For a recap on organ transplants, please look back at EDEXCEL B1. This concludes the first video in the EDEXCEL B3 revision tutorial series. In the next video, we will be looking at the reproductive cells as well as the menstrual cycle.